Read the disclaimer. Doofus. And please contact us through this email address with questions or fan art. Thank you for your support.
Parts formers. I have had a truly storied history with them, have I not? Starting with Siege 6 Gun, I had a fairly positive opinion of parts forming, informed by what I perceived to be the quality of that mold. However, several months afterwards, I quickly came to realize that wasn't as good as I thought it was. Then the modulators came along, with ironworks that proved that the gimmick had some promise, Airwave that proved that the gimmick wasn't flawless, and those were the only two they released. So, needless to say, my opinion of parts forming over the past few months has soured greatly, especially after going through Earthrise. And I could cover Ironworks, but instead I'm going to cover Paleotrex because, well, they're the new parts former. Salutations, denizens of the internet. I'm Firebite27, and let us commence our analysis of Transformers War for Cybertron Kingdom Deluxe Class Paleotrex.
In fossil mode, Paleotrex is cast primarily in brown and tan plastic, both of which complement each other and lend themselves to the fossil aesthetic. The brown paint on this figure is also used to great effect, looking like discoloration on the bones, which is something that, again, I really find myself enjoying. The painting and sculpting just have an air of realism to them, even though I know that this is just some fictional space robot in disguise that can also become a bunch of weapons for some reason. However, this figure doesn't just look like Beast Wars Megatron after he gave into a fad diet that required him to starve himself. It also kind of feels like it because you can balance an entire Paleotrex on top of a deluxe figure. But even in spite of this lack of mass, it actually manages to support a Legends class, or I guess Core class figure on its back. But unfortunately, this beauty comes with a price. He is very difficult to balance. But difficult to balance does not mean difficult to pose, and in fact, he actually possesses a great range of articulation, almost equal to that of Cheetor. Is it a he or is it a she? I don't know. Point is, Maya, take it away.
The T-Rex mode possesses a hinge and the tail, a hinge at the bottom of the neck and jaw, ball-jointed claws, rotation at the femur, a spread, knee bend, an ankle tilt, and a toe bend, and it can shake its hips.
Much like other skeletons with their flesh rotten off, Paleotrex does not have a lot of structural integrity, though that might be in service of the weapon modes. Now then, before we get onto those weapon modes, let's talk about Paleotrex's size. Here he is next to last week's review, Cybertron Scrap Metal, my last Kingdom review, Cheetor, Paleotrex's skeletal sister from another Mr., Kingdom Vertebrake, the last dinosaur reviewed on this channel, Power of the Primes Slash, a standard Qtama, a standard can of sparkling water, and Fraudside. So overall, Paleotrex's T-Rex mode is good, but it's a bit, how shall I put this, unstable. Kinda like an actual skeleton. Now then, Paleotrex, transform into weapon mode. And now Cordon shall serve as our unwilling test subject. Okay, I'll just say it. I am sold on this fossilizer gimmick. Just look at this. This looks awesome. Sure, it might come at a contrast to the robot mode and how pristine it looks, but it's just cool. I also like the back-mounted dino claws. I'm not sure why, but I think it has something to do with the fact that it feels like something that would be the brainchild of either Hirohiko Araki or Junji Ito. Araki is a more feasible candidate since Ito tends to focus more on visceral body horror, and I see this more as an action weapon that would rapidly punch someone while screaming out some random phrase. I love the bone axe, I love the cannon that looks like Beast Wars Megatrons, and I especially love the shield and the mace that references Optimus Primal's original toy. That's amazing. Also, it serves as a ventriloquist dummy.
You're being too polite! Have you ever even been on the internet before? What you should have said was... #bring back Shia LaBeouf!
Anyways, with that out of the way, there's also an alternative weapons formation where you turn the entire hind third of the dinosaur into a big old fuck-off sword. By the power of A-Skull! Also, on the instructions, this configuration is really stupid because they want you to use the dino feet as stilettos. But this makes the figure incredibly hard to balance, so I just end up turning the feet to the side, like this. Much easier to balance. Also, for some baffling reason, the actual Beast Wars characters were not given enough weapon ports to mount these weapons on them. And the only ports on Cheetor where the weapons can mount are, awkwardly placed, to say the least of it. Now then, that's enough talking about the weapons. Let's get on to the robot mode, and oh boy, it's so freaky, I love it!
Yes, hello, SCP Foundation. I'd like to report an anomaly.
I mean, just look at this thing, it's monstrous! And fair enough, it is made out of dinosaur bones, but at the same time, I'm kinda not bothered by the fact that they're claiming that this is a transformer. It's just cool, I really like the bone aesthetic, and again, it looks like you would expect a monster made out of dinosaur bones to look. Heck, I don't think it would look out of place in a jump scare heavy video game like Five Nights at Freddy's, or one of its many, many clones. Having said that, Kingdom as a line has been defined by its refusal to adhere to the conventions of previous generations' lines. So, as a result, I think that Paleotrex fits right in. As a figure, Paleotrex feels very experimental, operating on the exact fringe of what it means to be a Transformer, while still recognizably being a Transformer. But as with many experimental things, it's obvious that they haven't perfected everything yet. Like how his feet are so tiny that even the slightest breath on him will send him toppling to the ground. Also, be wary of the teeth on the skull, they are sharp. Speaking of the face, it's pretty ugly, but I like that. It's a face that's so ugly that only his motherboard will love him. But ugly is not terrifying. In order for that to happen, we need to close the jaw a little and let Paleotrex's eternal suffering commence.
The robot mode head can rotate, look up and down, shoulders rotate, and bend up and down. Elbow bends, biceps swivel, wrist swivels, and bend inward, and fingers flex. Hips are on universal joints, thighs swivel, knees bend, and knees swivel.
The articulation of this figure is grade A, for the most part. There are still some parts that I feel are lacking, like the lack of an ankle tilt. Also, storage for the tail weapon is pretty nice, but it just hangs off of the figure. Though, considering this figure's whole aesthetic, that's not that much of a big deal. Anyways, let's compare Paleotrex in robot mode next to Scrap Metal, Cheetor, Vertebrake, Slash, a standard Hutama, a standard can of sparkling water, and Broadside.
So, would I recommend acquiring a Paleotrex? Yes, I would fully recommend it, mostly for the fact that it does the weapon forming the best out of the lines so far. I mean, sure, the bow aesthetic isn't going to be for everyone, but that robot mode is so unique. The weapon modes look so cool, and, well, I just really like that Hasbro is trying out something new. And maybe that's why the figure score is so high, but I have to currently recommend it with a 9.5 out of 10. But literally, my only problem with this figure is the somewhat loose joints. Apart from that, it is basically perfect in my eyes. So, with that being said, this is Firebite27 over and out.